Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you might be catching us, whether you are a morning bird or a night owl. Welcome to the Richard Watkins Podcast. I am your humble host, Dr. Richard Watkins, and the Richard Watkins Podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network, your go to source for engagement and research and consulting related services. Visit the Science Policy Action Network or SPAN at span-inc.org. Now, with that out of the way, let's get the proceedings proceeding. I start these episodes off with a saying whenever or wherever you might be joining us, right? Now, wherever, of course, is interesting, right? Because you have the ability to watch this podcast basically anywhere, right? All you need is uh, internet service, your laptop, your desktop, your phone, or your tablet, and you are able to check us out on a wide variety of platforms and applications or apps. So that's wherever. Whenever also makes sense, right? Whenever, because you can obviously watch us when you wake up in the morning. You can listen to us on your drive to work. You can listen to us in the restroom. You can listen to us while you are getting ready for bed. You can watch us while you are waiting for someone to arrive to an event and perhaps they are running late, right? So, whenever makes sense, doesn't it? Because whenever is connected to time. And we've all got a firm understanding of what time is, right? Right? Well, if you've ever had to raise a child, the understanding and the concept of time is a very difficult thing for people to understand, for anyone to really grasp. For example, when is now? No, seriously, when is now? Now, people far smarter than myself will say, you idiot, now is now, of course. Right? Stop wasting our time. There are bigger fish to fry. Now, of course, it's now. Yeah, but is it? You see, by the time you say now, the now that you were referencing is actually past tense. Right? One step further, if you are communicating what now is to someone else, not only is the now you are referencing past tense, but it is even more so the case for the person receiving your communication of what now is. See, there's a period of time that must elapse for that person to even hear or read that you were saying now is in fact now. So, again, even more so the case for that person that you are talking to now is past tense. And moreover, as soon as they hear it, that now that you are referencing is even further in the past. Now, I know what folks are thinking right now. Listen, I don't have time to talk about ridiculous things such as this. Right there, of course, as I stated earlier, bigger fish to fry. But you cannot say that I'm wrong. You cannot say that I'm wrong because time is a very interesting concept or unit of measurement. Now, the units of measurement of time are classically considered to be seconds, minutes, hours, months, years, right? So we feel as though we have a firm understanding of the concept of time. But not me. I thought that I did, but the more that I think about the concept of time, the more I realize how loose my grasp of that concept is. Now, many of us who are spiritual or religious, we understand things that escape time, that were around before time. Well, how is that actually possible? Now, in the Christian faith, they'll say, lean not into your own understanding. And that's probably what I'd encourage you to do right here. But from a scientific point of view, the same is actually true in science. So, time has always existed, right? Maybe not. It is said that time was created, get this, during the Big Bang. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept of the Big Bang, but it is stated that the entire universe originated from the Big Bang, a singular event that then resulted in massive expansion and the creation of the universe. Now, the universe is considered to be both space and time. So at the Big Bang, time itself was created. And listen, that is just how it goes, right? Again, lean out onto your own understanding. It's hard to wrap my mind around the concept of time itself being created. Now, let me look something up really quick. Give me 1 second. I just asked because I just really want to know when we are talking about time, what are we talking about? All right. To understand a little bit more, let's scratch the surface a little bit more when we are talking about time. What we are actually talking about is the universe, right? Time is said to be, let me straighten out my pen, part of the universe, part of space and time come together to create what is the universe. Both space and time were created at the Big Bang. So that means that time itself is only 13.8 billion years old. Now I know what you're thinking. Whoa, that is really, really old. But what does it mean for time to be 13.8 billion years old? You see, part of the problem is using time to measure time. See, that's not what we usually do with things, right? Weight is a measurement of gravitational pull, right? Mass is a measurement of matter. Volume is a measurement of how much space is being taken. Density is a measure of how much matter is in a space, right? Volume, liters, milliliters, using the standard system, gallons, right? Quarts, mass, grams, weight, pounds. But time is interesting because time, in fact, is a measurement of the universe for which time is a essential part of. Now, I probably butchered that, right? There's going to be a physicist and astrophysicist that will listen to this, and we have astrophysicists, luckily, as guests on the show, and I will be sure to ask them this, but it is a very hard concept, even for them to wrap their minds around, right? Time is a very difficult concept to really grapple with. So time was created at the Big Bang. And so what does that even mean? So time has always existed, but time has always existed, but only for 13.8 billion years, which of course is a measurement of time, but it is a measurement of itself. So it is both always existed, but also at the same time 13.8 billion years. Hmm. And if that doesn't really scramble your mind or scramble your brain, imagine this. It is also said that the universe is expanding. Now, what that means is both space and time are expanding. Now, we can grapple with the concept of space expanding because we can kind of visualize something taking up more space. But what does it mean for time to be expanding? In fact, it is also said not only is the universe expanding, but it is expanding at a rate that is increasing. So it is expanding faster and faster. Again, that makes sense when we are thinking of space because we can imagine driving a car or running a race or riding a bike and going faster and faster and covering more ground. But what does it mean for time to expand? I know there's somebody out there who knows that answer, but quite honestly, I do not. And I don't know, please forgive me for bringing my ignorance to the public square, but time is something that I, oh man, have such a loose understanding of. Even how we perceive time, even how we perceive time is a difficult thing to wrap our minds around. For example, time is also something to be perceived. Time is also something to be experienced, right? You can feel time. You ask someone to stand in a corner, facing the corner for 30 minutes. For that individual facing the corner for 30 minutes, that 30 minutes can feel like a very long time. But if you get that same individual to spend 30 minutes doing something that they love, that 30 minutes goes like that. Same 30 minutes, but the perception of that 30 minutes is drastically different. How we relate to that time is drastically different. So if you are bored, you feel like you were bored for a very long time. You might be watching this video bored out of your mind and think to yourself, good gracious, look at your watch. Has this podcast episode, has this episode of the Richard Watkins Podcast, which again is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network, I throw that in there, feels like it has been going on forever now. If you are enjoying this, you're like, whoa, it's already been, I don't know how long it's been, but it's already been so long, it feels like nothing. A case in point, there is a difference that has been articulated when you have a career that you are passionate about. versus a job that you loathe showing up for, right? Now, it is like if you have a job that you loathe showing up for, you might look at the clock and it is 11 a.m. and you might think to yourself, oh, geez, it's only 11 a.m. This day is dragging. Now, the same 11 a.m. for someone who loves doing what they're doing might look at it and say, it's 11 a.m. already? Same 11 a.m. But two completely different relationships with that time. Furthermore, time is experienced different depending on how old you are. The younger you are, the more stretched out time seems to be. The easier it is to feel bored. The younger you are, the longer the days feel. While the older you are, the shorter the days feel. The younger you are, the longer the days. The older you are, the shorter the days. Oh, that is quite the predicament, right? Because one of the things that we always deal with is this dread of death, this dread of our imminent demise, the ticking of the clock, the grains of sand in the hourglass just passing by, noticing that we don't have that long left. We are not here forever. What makes that situation even worse is that the time that we have left, which are days, which are minutes, which are hours, which are months, or which are years, the older we get, the closer to our demise, the faster that time goes by. Tell me I'm wrong. Listen, tell me I'm wrong. I have no problem. I'm bringing my ignorance to the public square. Whereas when you were a kid, things took forever. The night before Christmas felt like a night that went on forever. The night of Christmas Eve, I remember anticipating waking up, playing with my toys, my video games on Christmas Day, and feeling like the night of Christmas Eve would never pass. Time out was such a huge punishment. I remember getting time out, and you have to go to time out for 5 minutes. Sit on the steps or sit in the hallway for 5 minutes when I'm acting up. My goodness, that 5 minutes felt like forever. Going to church as a little kid, church service is generally 2 hours. Oh boy, as a little kid, listen, bored out of my mind. I felt like church service would never end, or going to school. School is something that goes for about 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. As a kid, that felt like it took so long, especially early on. It felt like it took forever to pass. I felt like I was in school forever. And then I got to do 180 days of this. But then when the weekend came, oh my gosh, it was over like that. Because I was doing something that I enjoyed over the weekend. But because I'm younger, everything feels like it is taking longer. Everything is feel like it's taking longer. If you have a kid and they're looking forward to their birthday, and it's a few days away for that birthday, oh gosh, they'll say things like, oh man, I'm looking forward to my birthday. I can't wait for my birthday to get here. And they seem like they're telling you over and over and over again. Now, as an adult, as a parent, you're like, geez, you're saying this all, what you're saying this over and over again because your relationship to the time that has gone by between when they were telling you how excited they were about their birthday is different from theirs. For them, that time is stretched out. That same amount of time is stretched out. And so they're in that moment of anticipation. And for them, it feels much longer than it does to you. Not only because you're older, but also because you are not anticipating it like they are. Again, That is another thing that changes our relationship with time. Anticipation. Anticipation changes it. Have you ever been on a road trip? Road trip might take 5 hours, and you're going where you are going, and you're excited to be headed to your destination. That road trip going to your destination might feel like a long one. But now your trip is over and you're on your return. That same anticipation is not there. Perhaps it's dread. That trip, even though it is still 5 hours long, now feels much longer. The trip to your destination was 5 hours long. The trip returning from your destination was 5 hours long. But why does your trip to the destination feel longer than your trip from the destination? It's anticipation. The same time, it feels different. The same time, but it feels different. But going back to our relationship with time and age, when you are younger, the amount of time that you have lived is shorter. I mean, that's the whole concept of younger and older. If you were older, you have lived longer than someone who is younger. And when you are older, you have more time that you have experienced. Therefore, each moment, each unit of time, strangely enough, becomes less significant. When you were first born and you were alive, your first hour, that first hour is the most significant hour. Now, some might say your last hour is your most significant hour, but your first hour is your most significant hour because it is the only hour that you've ever experienced. Whereas if you were 80 years old, a single hour that passes is a drop in the bucket in regards to the number of hours that you have lived through and that you have experienced. Whereas if you were younger, 1 years old or 1 year old, I say 1 years, it's hard because after 1 year, it's plural. But you have less time, less hours to compare to. Therefore, each individual hour has far more significance because it is one of a few rather than one of many. Same is true for weeks and same is true for years. There is a saying that I am going to butcher that goes, the older I get, the faster the years go by. And that is because our relationship with that time is drastically different because we now have more time that has elapsed, meaning that every individual piece of time, every moment starts to lose its weight because it becomes one of an increasing many. It's a relationship thing. Therefore, as a kid, every moment feels longer than when you are an adult. You thought you had time figured out. I know you did. I know you thought you had time figured out. But I assure you, you do not. I assure you, you do not have time figured out. Let's take one more stab at this, right? Let's one more crack at this time thing. Take a sip really quick. Light. Now let's take two more cracks. Light is the fastest thing in the universe that we know of. It is so fast that we use it to measure distances, light years, because the universe is so vast. We measure its distance by how long it would take light to get there. Light is really fast. Let me show you how fast light is. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Only I could type. How fast is light? Light's fast. It's the fastest thing. I don't think we realize how fast light truly is. Light is so fast. And our universe is so vast, vast, so vast that we use the fastest thing as a way to just wrap our minds around just the distances that we have to deal with. We use the fastest thing possible. Light is so fast. It's so much faster than sound. If you've ever had an opportunity to check out an aerial show like the Blue Angels, awesome aerial show. These jets go by so fast that you see them, then you hear them. They're traveling faster than the speed of sound. So when you see it, it's silent, and then it goes by, and then you finally hear it. That is an example of how much faster light is than sound, for example. All right, so let's really take this out. So let's see, let's do miles first, right? Every second that goes by, light has traveled 186,282 miles every second. So light travels at a speed of 186,282 miles per second. And if you want to use kilometers, that's about 300,000 kilometers per second. That means light can circle the earth about 7.5 times in 1 second. That is so fast. It is so fast, in fact, that time doesn't really behave the same at the speed of light. It doesn't behave the same at the speed of light. I had an opportunity to interview an astrophysicist, and she made a claim that I still to this day cannot wrap my mind around because we all perceive time, right? But not everything experiences time. Now, and the perception of time is obviously related to consciousness, but if we are just really kind of thinking about it, light is traveling so fast, and a single particle of light is called a photon. A photon is traveling so fast that a photon does not experience time at all. Wait, what? Yeah, I said it. And listen, I heard it years ago and I still don't get it, right? A photon does not experience time. Light does not experience time. It is traveling so fast, 186,282 miles per second, does not experience time. Hey, oh, well, how we mean it doesn't experience time? It's traveling in a second, right? The second is a unit of measurement of time. I don't understand. This is what I mean when I say time really doesn't mean much. The last example of how time is an absolutely ridiculous concept is this. It is this reality that if you were to take two identical twins, two, right? Same age, roughly. Obviously, one emerged into the world before the other, but just for, the sake of this mental exercise, they are exactly the same age. Now, hopefully, I get this right. One of the twins becomes an astronaut, okay? And they are traveling to Mars, for example. First astronaut to reach Mars, right? We've never actually set foot on Mars before, right? We've landed spaceships and equipment on Mars, but we have never actually, as a person, set foot on Mars, a human. But in this example, one of the twins goes to Mars. They go to Mars, amazing accomplishment, and they return. Now, the other twin, super excited for her sister, was there at the departure. there, I guess, at the observation deck, seeing their other half take off to Mars. Right? Now, I don't know exactly how the breakdown is, but the reality goes as such. When that twin returns from Mars back to Earth and is rejoined with the twin that remained at Earth, the twin on Earth will be older than the twin returning from Mars. I'm just going to say that one more time for the folks in the back. Twins, the same age. One goes to Mars, one stays to Earth. The twin who went to Mars returns to Earth to find herself now younger than the twin that she left on Earth. We can do the same thing with the moon. It's just not as stark. The twin that goes to the moon and returns will be younger than the twin that stayed back home. Now, if you thought you understood what time is, that example should break that confidence. Maybe you, like me, should bring your ignorance to the public square, but I guess it takes strength and confidence to be vulnerable in your own ignorance. But maybe that's a topic for another day, right? A relationship with our own knowledge, with our own communicated intelligence, how we would like to be seen by the world, right? The worst thing to be seen as is dumb, as not knowing. But as I have come to find out, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. That's a very weird thing, right? It's all about how we are or how we desire to be perceived. Again, that is a topic for another day, but let us stop right there because we've been talking about perception a lot. We're going to switch gears a little bit because this is a appropriate segue to something else that I just want to touch on a little bit, right? Because our relationship with time is within the context of perception, how we are perceiving. We have spent a little bit of time talking about how our relationship with time changes depending on the activity that we are doing. Our relationship with time changes depending on our age. Our perception of time is impacted by many variables, right? But it's all about perception. Many people say, I have one of my mentors used to say, Richard, perception is reality. Perception is reality. And that is very true. Perception is reality. And psychology, one of my favorite courses, so at Fayetteville State, I majored in psychology. One of my favorite classes was a class called Sensation and Perception. Now, how it goes is sensation is a biological and physiological concept in which explores and seeks to understand and describe how we gather information of the world around us, right? Our senses, right? Our sense of sight, our sense of touch, right? Smell, taste, auditory, our hearing, right? And some people say there's other senses, right? How we are pulling in information. Now, that information that we pull in is raw, right? It's just information. It's just electrical signals, right? Right? That's all it is. I touch a table, right? I touch my hair and I need a haircut, but I touch my hair, I can feel it, right? That input on my fingertips when I smell something, right? I can smell it. The particles of that thing are received in my nose. The vibrations in my eardrum. These are sensory inputs. This is information, raw information, meaningless, but it's information. And our bodies have so many organs that are dedicated towards picking up that information, right? Your nose, your tongue, your ear, and all of these organs have so many different complicated aspects of them that allow them to receive information. But that information is meaningless without perception. Sensation is just how we are taking in information. Perception is where the real magic is. Perception is reality. And we are connected to reality through our senses, but our reality is defined by our perception of it. It is how we interpret the raw data, the raw information that we are bringing in. That is perception. And everybody perceives their reality differently. Perception is a process that happens in the mind. For example, if you are looking at me right now, watching this podcast, you are watching a continuous feed of visual information. But in reality, that's not what is happening. In reality, the information that you are actually pulling in, the visual input that you are pulling in is flawed. First, you see something, it goes into your eye and reflected upside down in your eye. So the actual information, visual information in your eye is upside down. But that's where perception comes in because that visual information only matters as it is interpreted by the mind. That perception, our mind flips the image to how it is supposed to be. It does that intuitively. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to, it's not a conscious effort. Your mind perceives it automatically, right? So the image is upside down, but it is perceived right side up. And your mind does that. Not only that, but your eye can only really see moving things, right? Because at a certain point, you kind of get tired of looking at the same thing. And so you kind of just shut off. However, your eye does a little trick to keep everything seeming continuous, fluid, as your eye bounces back and forth. Right? Even if you're looking straight at something and it's not darting around like eyeballs at a tennis match, your eye is moving like that. And that is just to keep your that sensory input locked in because at a certain period of time it will tap out if it's just doing the same thing. So it just keeps doing like this. So you're able to have that continuous feed, right? It is just fluid, it is just continuous. You're just watching me with no gaps. If that is not enough, also the way your vision works is and again, listen, check this out. I'll put links so you can see all of this stuff, which I from time to time do in these episodes, so you can see what I'm talking about. There we go. See, read what I'm talking about, which is the fact that we still, even though our eye moves back and forth to kind of stay locked in, to stay open to visual information, it's still off and on, off and on. And this is a byproduct of how our senses work, how our nervous system work. It's off and on, right? So you're not actually receiving a continuous, unbroken thread of visual information. What you are seeing are segments off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on. Now, you don't notice this. What you notice is just a video, just unbroken. That is because a process happens in your mind called interpolation. Interpolation is the concept or the ability of your mind to fill in gaps. It uses the sensory information that it has already picked up and the sensory information that through experience it anticipates to fill in the gaps in the middle. Filling in the gaps in the middle. Right? So as you see something, it is perceived to be unbroken, a continuous stream of information, a continuous flow of visual information, where in reality, it's broken up. Off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on. This means, for lack of a better explanation, that from a visual perspective, and other perspectives as well, but from a visual point of view perspective, half, might not be exactly half, of what you're seeing is made up in your mind. Now, that's not saying that it's not happening. It's just saying that your mind is filling in the gaps, right? So you are seeing or perceiving an unbroken flow of visual information. That's what you're perceiving, even though that's not what you're receiving. That's what you're perceiving because it is made up in your mind. Just let that sit there, right? Half of what you see is made up in your mind. It's not saying that it's not happening, but it is saying that it is made up in your mind. Let's do one more. This is cool. This is cool. This is cool. All right, let's stay on the site regarding perception. Now, let's see. What do I have here? I need a prop. Chapstick. Right. Well, it's not chapstick. It's Carmex, right? No, they're not a sponsor. Sorry. So just showing you this uh, lip moisturizer. How do I describe it? Lip balm, right? Lip balm, right? All right. That's not the point. The point I'm trying to make. This is lip balm right here, right? You see this. What color is that? Many people would say that's red. Many people would say the rest of it is yellow. So red, yellow. Okay. Now, chances are that you are not seeing this and this as the same color that I am seeing it. Now, we've been conditioned and we've been trained to recognize this as red and recognize this as yellow. But research has shown us that we are actually not seeing the same colors. We've been trained to recognize this as red and recognize this as yellow, but we are not actually seeing the same colors. What actually might be red to me might actually be received to you as pink or red. And what might be seen as yellow to me might be seen to you as gold or orange or green or some other color. However, since we have all been trained to recognize this as red and this as yellow, no matter who you are, unless other variables are at play, we will say this is red and this is yellow, despite the fact that we are actually seeing two different colors. So we as individuals are different from one another in how we actually see the entire world around us, though we are trained to recognize it at the same. In reality, we are actually not seeing the same thing. That's why the old adage, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, is so true. It's so true because everybody sees things slightly different, even though we may be trained or conditioned to recognize and state things as the same color. Lastly, let's take a different sense, for example. This is really cool. There are two senses that are very connected: the sense of smell and the sense of taste. Our sense of smell and the sense of taste are so connected. Which is why, have you ever noticed that if you are feeling sick, you're dealing with congestion, you have a stuffy nose, mucus makes it hard for you to breathe in and out of your nose. Therefore, your sense of smell is altered. And what you also might recognize is that things begin to taste different. And the reason that is, a lot of people say, oh, when I'm sick, I don't like this, or when I'm sick, things taste bland, or when I'm sick, that is because you can't smell as well. And when you cannot smell as well, your experience with food or what you are eating through taste changes. Because it turns out that taste is an experience that combines both smell with the actual sensation of tasting something. It combines the nose with the tongue. If you don't believe me in that example of being sick, if it wasn't enough for you, right? First of all you can do is you can ask somebody who's lost a sense of smell. There's a lot of people out there who have lost a sense of smell. If you ever have had, if you or anyone in your family or friend have lost the sense of smell, you can ask them about their experience with food and they'll tell you it has changed. But you want another example, grab a piece of candy. Starburst is a good one. Again, Starburst is not a sponsor, just an example, right? Grab a Starburst and eat it. But before you place it in your mouth, pinch your nose closed with your fingers. With your nose pinched closed, place the Starburst in your mouth and begin to chew, right? Now, while you're chewing that Starburst, release your nose. At that moment, you will recognize that the full and complete experience of taste is a perception related to the combination of senses between smell and taste. And when you release your nose, all of that rushes to you in a way that perhaps you weren't aware of before. So you could just do this anywhere. It doesn't take long. Grab the candy. Again, in my example, it was a Starburst. Unwrap it, pop it in your mouth. Before you pop it in your mouth, hold that nose closed. Don't put it in your mouth with your nose open. Pinch your nose closed. with one hand, other hand, put the candy in your mouth, begin to chew, then let your nose go, and you'll truly get it. Perhaps what you'll notice is while you're chewing with your nose closed, all you'll be able to really taste is sweet. But then when you open your nose, that full flavor comes in, right? Whether it's strawberry, lemon, cherry, orange, right? That rushes, and you're not really able to experience that full flavor without your nose. Talk to chefs, talk to anyone, right? That part of smell is so critical to the experience of flavor, to the experience of eating, to the experience of tasting. That perception is related to a combination of things. And also, people will tell you texture too. So, those are examples of just what I am talking about. It is further evidence that the world around us is just truly amazing. And then if that wasn't enough, that there are recognizable differences and how we are perceiving things with one another, a difference in our age and how that impacts our perception with time. And then go a little bit further and start thinking about how animals have completely different abilities, completely different senses. And then you start asking the question, like, well, how are they perceiving the world around them? Perhaps that is another topic for another day of the Richard Watkins podcast, because today we've completed our short and brief, but hopefully interesting conversation that is more or less only about perception. We've discussed time, we've discussed perception. These two things are connected. But all I hope is that you learned something today that you were able to bring up later and impress the person that you were talking to. That is my only hope. Other than that, I just hope you have a absolutely wonderful day. I have been your host, Dr. Richard Watkins. This has been the Richard Watkins Podcast. Again, a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network. Check out the Science Policy Action Network, or SPAN, at span-inc.org. And remember that the future is not something to wait for. It is something to build. Until next time, take care. Goodbye.